Eddie and Lucci. Today's video, we are going to talk about lines of intelligence. What is it? How do we use it? And for more on that, I'm going to toss it over to Lior because I don't know a whole lot about lines of intelligence currently.
Oh, sure you do. So if you saw our levels video, it could be possible to think that a person, is at a given level. We were doing our best to succinctly describe what levels are, but people are a lot more complicated than that. Levels breaks down into various different kinds of intelligences, and we all exist on a spectrum. And the level a person could be coming from could change at any given time based on external or internal stimuli. For more information, I pass it over to Eddie.
Yeah, so the idea is actually pretty in line with phenomenology, which is a philosophical theory that I quite enjoy. The idea is that when we try and really categorize things and create these overall understandings, often we take a lot of meaning away instead of adding more meaning to it. So, I mean, an easy example is if we say someone is depressed, for example, right? Not much to do with lines of intelligence, but when we decide someone is in that box and we kind of leave it at that and we don't go into the details very much, and we don't ask ourselves more questions, we can come to a lot of false understandings. Whereas if we say, well, what do I really mean on what lines? Are their energy levels low? Are their motivation low? Are they having a hard time feeling happiness, but generally quite manic, right? We don't really know in which areas specifically it's happening. We see it a lot as well in agility in teams, where if we say, a team is at a 6 out of 10 in agile maturity, if we leave it at that without going straight into really the lines along which that maturity is rated, then we don't get a full picture, right? So if I just make this group categorizing, this kind of average or this kind of mean of all of their scores, it doesn't say much. If I say, well, along team building and retrospective lines, they're at an 8, whereas in terms of ticket updating and transparency of work, they're at a 4. Right. So what we try to do is we kind of take these tangibles, these ideas that people have, these kind of categories or these kind of understandings that we make, and we say, let's break it down. Let's look at it in more detail. Let's split it into these lines and say, okay, on what lines does intelligence exist? On what lines does agile maturity exist? Intelligence could be emotional intelligence. Intelligence could be interpersonal intelligence. Intelligence could be, the capacity to read and memorize something, right? So when we look at this, we put it onto its tracks, and then we look at it on the tracks. And then, there's this phrase of some people can't see the forest from the trees because they're too stuck in the details. I think in the modern day world we find ourselves in, especially in business where people are very busy and people want to get big pictures very much, they often can't see the trees from the forest. So they're not seeing that individual things are an issue. And that can be a big problem when you're trying to fix things, right? In terms of not going directly to the issue itself, but trying to fix 10 things at once and trying to fix a kind of broad generalization instead of looking at the specifics. That being said, it can be really hard to apply this to business unless you have a pretty good system for it. And I think Lucci might have a pretty good system for it that she's gonna share with the rest of us.
Thank you, Eddie. Yes, given that this is so complex, we were trying to think, okay, but can we just try this with our clients, like to understand, I don't know, the different levels of development of a team, of an individual, even to an organization, what's the level of development of an organization? So what we did was, we started to identify different lines of intelligence, and we organized them in the 4 quadrants. We always go back to the 4 quadrants perspective, which is central for us. And we started to try to find, okay, let's take one line, for instance, let's say purpose, and let's give a definition of what purpose means. And what is a question that we can ask to somebody that then that person could respond? And given his or her response, we would try to, okay, let's maybe this answer is related more to this level or another level or another level. And we categorize 4 levels of development: amber, green, orange, green, and teal or integral. And what we did was in a work that we did together, Interalis and Interal Agile, through a lot of virtual sessions, we started to describe each of the characteristics of that level regarding to each line. And at the same time, we wanted to think and express what was a healthy expression of that line in that level and what was an unhealthy expression. And that was something that we did for like almost 2 years, I think. And the idea was that to provide information that when we have an answer from a client, we could say, okay, this answer, we are not thinking about the person, right? But the answer, maybe this is more like an orange answer, because maybe that the answer would be, my purpose in life is to be successful and have and achieve results and be the best in my team. So maybe that, based on everything and all the analysis, would say that is more orange, okay? That regarding that line. Then if there was an, yes, thank you, Lior, because maybe it's more complicated, like describing it like this. But this is the Excel spreadsheet that we created. And for each line, we provided this information. And the way we are applying this in very simple terms, it is, we just created a survey describing each line and asking the question. And then that is the only thing. And every person would answer that survey. And based on the responses, we would be able to allocate each response to each level. And that would give us like an overall estimation of the level of development of a person, a team, or an organization.
You used purpose as an example of a line, and I think there's some more on the screen, but I wondered if you could talk more about like just a couple of other types of lines, because when I think intelligence, I'm normally thinking quite a narrow view. So what are some lines that might surprise people?
Self-management, would it surprise people? What do you think?
I think so. And I thought as well, physical health as well was one that maybe wouldn't come intuitively as an intelligence line, but actually we've said that people have a different level of development as it relates to physical health as well.
Yes, of course. Like maybe I could mention some of the lines that we included. So, as I said, there is purpose, physical health. I'm not going to read each line, but personal finance, integrity, regarding the lower left quadrant, organizational purpose, work mindset, communication, incentives, which are very, very important for an organization. Regarding the upper right quadrant, which are behaviors. Behaviors is aligned, competencies and training. What are the trainings that the organization is providing to people? How do people relate to those trainings? Do they wait for the leader to tell them, okay, go and do this training? Or there is a culture where people can say, I am eager to learn more about this. I would like to do this training. It's more like self-manage that with and something inside of them that they are empowered to do that. And then we have, for the system quadrants or the lower right quadrant, we have management, processes, agility, that is also very relevant to everything that we are talking through these videos, know how to be more agile. What is the level of agility in a team? Maybe they think that as they are applying agile, they are very agile, no, in the practice. But then if you think about how we are describing each level, maybe they are too dependent, no, of a scrum master to act. Maybe they do not discuss how they are feeling or what is their mind right on this in this session. Maybe there are too many processes that are not so effective. So that's the idea. The idea is to provide like a very simple diagnostic from our perspective. This is not like a law. No, we are practicing this, like to have a diagnostic and then to work with that. What is it that maybe there's somebody that maybe their answers may be more like amber, no, most of on the level of amber. What is it that there's something limiting that person or that team to move to another level depending on each line? And that's it, I think. Those are more of the lines. We have described like between 32 and 35 lines.
In summary, then, it adds another dimension of insight in the, instead of just saying a thing is a level, we're now saying there are 30 odd qualities or facets to that object or person or team. And they might be different levels in each quality or each line, as we've said. So rather than just generalizing and saying that thing is that color, we're now saying there are 30 facets and they could be at different levels. And I think the use of this tool originally, and you've used this in the wild, I think more than anyone else, which is you can then identify kind of where they're excelling and where they might want to spend time working, and that might be a different line or or collection of lines that they might want to improve. Is that accurate?
Yes, exactly, Ben. That's it, and also it gives you like detail for each line, and you can work on that, and you can even say, okay, let's look at this. With what line do you connect more, and is something that you think you can work, for instance, and choose that line and just work with that. And you can apply different practices or tools to be able to develop skills and competencies to try to move to another level. Yeah. And at the same time, as it is organized per the different quadrants, you can also have a like an overview in terms of the 4 quadrants. And that also gives you information, because maybe a team is very focused on lines that are on the right-hand side of the quadrants, the more of the task and processes, and they are good on that. And looking at what happened on the other lines from the left-hand side, the team can identify, okay, maybe we need to work more on communication because we are more amber, let's say. We are in like this in brackets, there's more amber in the way we communicate, is more amber than orange or green. So for me, that is also very important, that may arise from this analysis.
An example of that perhaps being an issue, right? So if our communication's amber, then it's role oriented. So you might see people not communicating because they don't think it's their role to do that kind of communication, even if that kind of communication could head something off at the pass. So what we're looking at here, I think, is more of an alignment issue, right? Because we know that we need rules and guardrails in amber. Those are important. And we need achievement-based thinking in orange, and that's important. And we need to make the world a better place and have happy employees in green, and those are important. So it's looking at, including these things with regards to what's appropriate to each situation.
There's so much information here. Thank you so much for presenting this. It reminds me a lot of some companies will have skill assessments that are very focused on maybe just one skill area. And this just feels like a very holistic view of an entire organization or team or individual. So that's really awesome. So thank you so much for all this information. For those of you watching, if you have any questions, comments, want to know more, please reach out to us in the comments below. And we'd love to hear from you to see what you think and if maybe this is something that's shown up where you are. So Lior, Eddie, Lucci, Ben, thank you so much. And we will see you next time.